In the days of the judges, Israel once again found itself under the heavy hand of oppression. This time it was the Midianites, a nomadic people known for their swift camels, raiding tactics, and merciless plundering. Like a swarm of locusts, they swept into Israel at harvest season, stealing grain, livestock, and anything of value, leaving devastation in their wake. The Israelites, helpless and terrified, abandoned their homes to hide in caves and mountain strongholds. For 7 long years they lived in fear and poverty, their cries rising to heaven as they pleaded for deliverance. It was into this climate of despair that God called Gideon, a man who seemed the least likely candidate for leadership. He was from the tribe of Manasseh, considered one of the weaker tribes, and he himself admitted he was the youngest in his family. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, Gideon was not out in the open rallying an army, but secretly threshing wheat in a winepress, a pit dug into the ground, to hide his food from the Midianites. To call him a mighty warrior at that moment almost seemed ironic. Yet that is exactly how the angel greeted him. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Gideon, however, was not quick to believe. His heart was heavy with doubts, not just about himself, but about God. "If the Lord is with us," he asked, "why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders our ancestors told us about?" His questions reflected the despair of a nation that felt abandoned. Yet God's answer was not to provide explanations, but to give a command. Gideon was to deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Still uncertain, Gideon asked for signs. First, he prepared an offering of meat and bread, which the angel touched with his staff, causing fire to flare from the rock. Later, he famously laid out a fleece of wool, asking God first to make the fleece wet with dew while the ground stayed dry, and then to reverse the sign the next night. Patiently, God met Gideon in his weakness, showing that his power would be with him. Strengthened by these assurances, Gideon obeyed God's first command, to tear down his father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Though he did it at night out of fear, the act marked a turning point, an open rejection of false gods and a step toward leading Israel back to the Lord. Soon after, Gideon blew a trumpet and summoned men from several tribes to join him in battle against the Midianites. But God had a surprising plan. Gideon's army was too large, 32,000 men strong. If Israel won with such numbers, they might claim the glory for themselves rather than give it to God. So God instructed Gideon to send home anyone who was afraid. 22,000 departed, leaving 10,000. Still too many, God said. He then reduced the number further through a test at the water's edge. Those who drank by lapping water with their hands to their mouths were chosen. Those who knelt to drink were sent home. In the end, Gideon was left with only 300 men to face an enemy whose numbers were like sand on the seashore. Imagine the anxiety that must have gripped those men, 300 against tens of thousands. But God, ever merciful, gave Gideon another reassurance. He sent him to overhear a conversation in the Midianite camp. There, Gideon listened as one soldier told of a dream where a loaf of barley bread tumbled into the Midianite camp and overturned a tent. His comrade interpreted the dream. "This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon, son of Joash. God has given the Midianites into his hands." Strengthened by this divine confirmation, Gideon returned with renewed faith. That night, Gideon divided his 300 men into 3 companies. Each man was armed not with sword and shield, but with a trumpet, a torch hidden in a jar, and a shout prepared on his lips. At Gideon's signal, they blew their trumpets, smashed the jars, and lifted their blazing torches high, crying out, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon." The sudden noise, light, and shouting in the dead of night threw the Midianite camp into utter chaos. Believing they were surrounded by a massive army, the Midianites turned their swords against each other and fled in panic. Israel pursued them, and the enemy was routed. Gideon, once a fearful farmer hiding in a winepress, had become the leader through whom God delivered his people. His story is one of transformation, of how God takes the weakest, the doubting, and the insecure, and turns them into instruments of his power. It is also a reminder that victory belongs to the Lord, not to human strength or numbers. By whittling Gideon's army down to 300, God made it clear that Israel's deliverance was his doing. so that no one could boast. Gideon's journey encourages us to trust in God's calling even when we feel inadequate, to step forward in faith despite our doubts, and to believe that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Like Gideon, we may begin in fear and uncertainty, but when we place our trust in God, He can transform us into instruments of His glory, accomplishing far more through us than we could ever imagine on our own. If you are loving this video, please hit both that subscribe and like button to help this message to spread far and wide. Check out the rest of the Bible Stories playlist to enjoy heartwarming events of the Bible brought alive. Thank you for supporting the Wake Up channel. God bless you.